People end up in management and they have no tools about how to manage people or how to, I would say, lead people, because lead people, you need to work with what's going on in their mind and what's going on in their head. A person can and will only do what's in their own head. A plan is only a plan when people can tell it back to you in their own words and they're willing and capable of doing it. So this then just becomes a completely different way of getting your strategy to come alive in your business, by getting people to co-design what good looks like. You see chaos in relationships where people are fighting the ones they love the most. It's like nuts, but that's what happens because we fall back on more primitive patterns in ourselves and we do these things to each other. Trauma is not what happens to us. It happens inside of us because of what happened to us. So this is not about trying to feel better. This is about getting better at feeling. I think people want to love themselves, but they don't know how to love themselves. And the bit they need to love is the bit about themselves they dislike the most.
They say that the son pays for the sins of the father. I really have my father, Bart McEnroe, to blame for getting me interested in this whole area of spirituality and psychology and what it means to live a good life. Bart joins me on the Human Kinder podcast this week, and we get a chance to look at how he has been smuggling spirituality into organisations for the last 20 years. Bart shares years of lessons in psychology and business leadership and self-leadership, and really unpacks the brain, the mind, the human condition in very simple, clear and concise terms, as well as giving practical tools to help you be at your best. It's rare that you get a chance to sit down with your father in one of these circumstances and record a podcast, so this was a massive privilege for me. I have learned an immense amount from Bart over the years. Let's get stuck into this one. It would be good to start with a little bit of your background and story and the sort of work that you do and how you got into that, maybe would be interesting for people to know about.
Okay. Born in the last century, obviously. Born in 1963, grew up in a farming background. Did a degree in agriculture, coming from there. There was no work in the 1980s in Ireland, so I went and I worked in construction in the UK. I became a chippy on the way over on the boat and on the train. And so I started doing carpentry work because I was handy with my hands. And after a while, I went back and did an MBA, and then I got into business. And then when I got into business, we're in the whole process of area of change and change management and working with people and trying to bring about improvements to business. But I found that we'd impose things on people and they'd last a little while, and then sort of when you'd leave, people go back to doing whatever they did. So I suppose I got curious around how do you work with people in a way that you're not imposing change on them, and that they're actually doing something that's going to sustain after you leave. So that sort of brought me towards understanding people and how people worked. And so I sort of ended up learning a little bit about psychology, with a group called the Human Givens Group. And over the years, I've just been very curious about, putting a set of tools or a way of working together with people so that people could, work well with themselves and work well with other people, I guess. So that's a quick.
And so when you go into an average organisation, what is it that you see that's not working well? Why would they need to do work in that area?
Well, the biggest indicator is results aren't what people expect them to be. So if people aren't getting results, then it means that there's something not happening in the business that could be happening. So that's probably the biggest thing. So then from there, I like to start with, if you can at all, start with the managing director, start with the chief executive, whoever that person is, because they have a big role in setting culture in the business and how they engage with people and how they engage with the senior team and how the senior team engage with everybody else. Sort of just sets the culture, the setup for how the business is going to work. So yeah, I see that and I see opportunities because these people, they're great business people, they're great entrepreneurs, but no one ever really helped them to understand how people work or what goes on in people's heads. And people would always say that, the human resource is the most important resource, but no one ever gave them a toolbox, so to speak. Like when I started Chippy and I got tools in the Wembley market, and I was able to use those tools instead of being a labourer, I became a Chippy. And people end up in management and they have no tools about how to manage people or how to, I would say, lead people, because to lead people, you need to work with what's going on in their mind and what's going on in their head. So I just, start seeing opportunities in that area and ask a few questions, and then so we go from there.
Yeah, that's something I've observed in the work that I do as well, is that often there are a lot of technically strong people in these positions, and at a certain point when they get into leadership positions, it's not about doing the work anymore. It's about that work happening through other people. And it is a completely different role. And there are a lot of very ambitious people who, because they want to progress, they go up into leadership positions without really asking themselves, am I capable or am I able to work in that space? And so if you have someone in that situation, and if someone's listening to this now, what are the first things that you would really start to look at with that person? Let's say it's the managing director and you did actually manage to get in working with them at a senior level. What's the first sort of areas you would look at?
Well, you'd probably. I think a lot of it comes down to the engagement style of the senior team, how they engage among themselves, how they engage with the levels of people underneath them, and like I have a very simplistic idea or simple idea of. I say this to people all the time. I say, a person can and will only do what's in their own head. So people are working with people and they feel that they can talk at or communicate or put out an email or, I don't know, give an instruction or hold a PowerPoint presentation. And a lot of people see that as, effective communication. And in my experience, it really isn't, because, people can and will only do what's in their head. And a lot of managers don't realize that that's what they should be doing, is working with the picture in the other person's head. And by just putting across their own thing, it doesn't mean that they've actually communicated. So I get people tuned into that. And I call this approach, it's sort of a thing called the tell-ask balance, that you sort of get managers to tune into what amount of time are they talking, what amount of time do they have the other person talking, because if you don't have the picture clear in the other person's head, then they're going to do whatever's in their head. So that's a place that I try to hone people into very quickly if I can.
Because this is something that it appears very obvious when you start to talk about it, that a person can only do what's in their head. Why is it, though, that our default is to invest in our ability to communicate, to tell stories, to, let's say if it's a strategy, or even if you're a parent and you're trying to teach lessons, why is it that we're so defaulted to feeling like we just need to tell people, and if they don't understand it's because we weren't clear enough and we just need to keep repeating it or create more clarity? What is it in us that makes us try to push those things into people's head, as it were?
Well, I don't think it was always that way, because the oldest learning system in the world is really the apprenticeship system, and that would have went on for, I don't know, thousands of years, I guess, before formal education came along. So I sometimes play around with the word education with people, and I go back and I look at it. I think it's the Latin derivative of it, which means educare, and it, from the take I take on it, is that it's about drawing out from within. So, if you look at educare, that's what it seems to mean. And so somewhere along the line, that's become very formalized, and the communication has become a bit one way. And so what I do is get people to tune into that and say, right, well, look at, And if you mentioned strategy there, if you bring it to something like strategy, people say, oh, we have a great plan, we have a great strategy. We as a senior team have gone off on a, I don't know, good weekend or a junket or a week to wherever it was and come up with this strategy. And we have a really clear picture of where this thing needs to go. And then they may pay a considerable amount of money for this, and it's a very prized thing, and it's in a folder, a document, or a PowerPoint, or something like that. And then they go along and they communicate this at town hall meetings or whatever the heck it is, and then they're all surprised that the strategy isn't living for some reason. It's not actually alive in the business after all of that. And so, I say to people, like, when is a strategy a strategy? When is a plan a plan? And most people think it's a plan once they've communicated. And I would say, well, look, if we're living with the idea that a person will only do what's in their own head, and we take that as a general bit of common sense, then the idea that I would say to them, look, a plan is only a plan when people can tell it back to you in their own words and they're willing and capable of doing it. So they're motivated to do it and have the capabilities to do it. Then there's a chance that plan becomes sort of a living plan or a living strategy. And people get that eventually because they realize, well, what we've been doing hasn't been working. So they sort of try it. You try and get them to get people to co-design a workflow, as I would call it, and just to, get people from different departments into a room and say, look at what does good look like from start to finish, or from creation to cash in the business. And you just get people to, plot it out. Like, hopefully the managing director or whoever, the CEO or whoever it is, who's facilitating this meeting has an idea of what good looks like. And they're trying to get the manager or the people in that group to come up with their picture or better. And then this leaves us open to the whole thing of shared intelligence or team intelligence. But crucially, if you have people from different departments coming up with this, immediately what you're doing is you're doing away with silos, because people can then see context and they can see that, right, we're coming up with this plan. I can see where my work impacts on this other part and that part and that part. And gosh, that's why they've always been going on about that piece of paper or that pro forma invoice or whatever it was, that purchase order. That's why that's so essential. I just thought they were nagging me over this piece of paper, but I can see from their perspective, for us getting paid, it's a critical piece of kit. And people get to know each other, and people get to realize that they're all part of the same thing and they're all working together. So this then just becomes a completely different way of getting your strategy to come alive in your business by getting people to co-design what good looks like. So, and this is, we call it a workflow, which is not a mistake. It's a reason for that, because what people always want to do is they want to get into the flow state, no matter where they're at in sport or in individually or in a group or, or right through the business. So you're sort of giving people the tools and the skills to get people to integrate and come together and work in flow. So no, not rocket science. It's pretty simple stuff, really.
Hello there. Just a quick one from me. If you're enjoying this conversation, the biggest thing that you can do to support the show is to hit the follow button if you're on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts, and please do rate 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and give us a like. All of these things are completely free. They really support our growth, and they also make sure that you get notified of any new content that comes out, so you don't miss a thing. Also, if you're interested, you can follow Humankinder on Instagram at human_kinder, where I'm posting many different clips across different episodes and sharing content along the journey. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your listening. And now back to the show. This strikes me as something, though, that's not just applicable in business. It strikes me as something that is overlooked in various different areas of our life, whether it's family life or whether it's sporting life or communities or coming together in teams or in relationships. There does tend to be this one-way directive communication on both sides with very little listening. And what you're suggesting here is much more of a coaching style approach, a lot more asking questions, a lot more listening and getting different perspectives. What do you see as some of the main things that people need to actually learn if they wanted to bring this into their relationship, bring it into their business, bring it into their life?
Okay, well, just to summarize very briefly, they need to learn that, first of all, the person can only do what's in their own head, and they can't do what's in your head, even though you think you've communicated clearly, whatever way you've done it. You don't actually know what's in the other person's head until the other person shares it back to you in their own words, and that they're motivated to do it and they're capable of doing it. So that's one of the things they need to learn. But if they're going to sort of get this balance between telling and asking, if they're going to adjust this, and then, well, the first thing they got to do is they got to get comfortable and tune the people into getting comfortable with the discomfort of silence and giving people a bit of space to think. Because after you ask a good question, people need a bit of space. So it's a different energy or engagement style, which is about trying to know things individually, and then trying to get things to link up so things will work well. So the real skill of it then is, first basic skill is to realize that you need to be have the person doing most of the talking. That's one thing. The next thing is you need to learn the difference between open and closed questions. And people start off doing this initially when you say, well, you have to ask more questions, and they come back and say, well, it's not working. It's just not working. And it's all right, just give me an example of some of the stuff, the questions you've been asking. And say, well, we've shared our plan. Do you understand? The person, yeah. Yeah, do you agree it's a good idea? Yeah. And they'll come back with these things that they didn't say and they didn't buy in. And sure, obviously the person's asked 2 closed questions in a row, and they haven't opened it up to ask the person, okay, well, what do you see in this? What do you think could look like yourself if we were working from creation to cash in the context of the needs of all the stakeholders? So when that question is very much structured in a certain way to say, well, how do you think things would be like if they were working well in the context of all the stakeholders? Because that question is designed to open up the frontal cortex of the person so that they think in the bigger context, but then of course it's an open question. So it's an open question, it opens the person's up, and perhaps God, I never ever thought about the customers before. Okay, right, so you've been working here for a number of years. Yeah, but it's just all been about production and whatever. Well, what about customers and their needs? So we need to open it up to that. So that's a good thing to do. And once you've started open up the thing by asking questions, then the person's going to have said a whole lot of things. So to get sort of shared meaning or a sense of any sort of meaning at all, that what they've said is effective, then the person needs to know that you've listened to them. And an awful lot of people, when I'd be working like, it's a good listener, and they say, yeah, sure, listen all the time. And I'd say, well, right, and so what does that look like? What would you be doing? And they don't understand that they have to make subliminal nods, move the right contact and all that stuff. And that's interesting. They just call that active listening. But one of the big skills we find a lot of benefit from is teaching people that they actually need to summarize what the other person has said. Once the other person has talked for a little while, or if the person starts to repeat themselves, or if the person sort of gets lost in their own head a little bit, then it's a good idea to ask them, it's not a good idea to ask them anything more at that point. What you need to do is you need to summarize back to the person saying, okay, so Cian, if I'm getting you right, what I understand you to say is this, 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 and this. And you find that the person is go, yeah. And then wait a little bit of time for that to sort of sink in or settle in the person's head before you ask something different, to move in a slightly different direction, sort of steer them a bit towards, back on track where you think they need to be going, or just wait for them to digest that to come back with something different. So what you're doing is you're helping the person understand what it is going on in their own head a bit more by summarizing it. And so when you summarize it back as well, you're also validating the person. So you're helping them get some of their needs met. So there's a lot happening when you change your engagement style to working the picture in the person's head, asking open questions, and summarizing the person back and then validating them on that. Now, these seem incredibly simple tools, and they are, but as we often say, knowledge decreases choice. So you have to decide what it is you're going to do and how you're going to do it. So it has to be simple, the far side of complexity. It has to be beyond complexity. So when we ask people to talk and we listen to them and we validate them, we just see it as one of the quickest ways to change a culture that you possibly can, because you're changing the engagement style and people are getting attention and stars and validation for talking about the things that are going to move the business or the workflow or the performance of the business towards the results that they want. So it's very simple stuff, really.
It is very simple, but not straightforward to do. And what you've outlined there are a couple of really simple skills that people can learn to do. So you're looking at summarizing, you're looking at asking, which is feeding back what you've heard from someone in your own words. It means you've taken it in and you've actually allowed it into yourself and then fed it out so this person actually knows. You've talked about validation, which is like intentional praise on something specific about the behaviour, and then also mentioning something about their character that you admire, like a deeper level of validation than just a nice thank you. You've mentioned as well asking questions, and you sort of hinted at sequencing, being really mindful about your questions, really thinking about, are they open, are they closed? But what strikes me about all of this is that there will be a lot of people who have heard this before. There'll be a lot of people who have maybe been on courses before around listening, coaching. There'll be a lot of people who know that they need to listen to their partner more. But it strikes me that there's something more fundamental underneath the skills that need to be taught. And what it seems like to me is there needs to be a shift in intention or a shift in motivation, because without that, then the skills themselves are simply mechanical things. And so I'm wondering, how do you help people to trigger that shift in themselves, that they actually want to do these things, that it's coming from a place of genuine curiosity or inquiry? How would you take someone on that journey? Or what's that look like?
Yeah, well, I suppose all communication is about manipulation anyway, right? So the question is, I think it comes from, man has hands, to put your hands on something, put your hands on somebody's mind. But I think what we need to understand, I suppose, a little bit is a bit more about what we're actually working with, right? And what we're actually looking for to come out of any engagement. And here I'm going to just introduce the idea of emergence, is that what we want is, we want something to emerge out of this conversation that really can't be forced. So basically, and this goes back to the work on complex systems and complex adaptive systems, is that in complex adaptive systems, what happens is, depending on the quality of the interdependent interactions between the variables in a complex system, then what we have is we have the emergence of things like flow, we have the emergence of things like mind and relationships. We have things moving towards more and more complexity and more towards order, and we avoid things like rigidity and chaos. So what we're doing is we're creating the conditions for the emergence of, the best part of being a human being, so to speak. So now that's a lot to take in for a person who's just maybe listening to this podcast, and they're thinking, wow, what's this guy just touched off there? And it's like, if anyone has been in a good relationship, you know that you don't force it. You don't force this connectivity. If people have been in a team, so someone has somehow created the conditions for the emergence of team intelligence or teamwork to happen. It's not forced. So so that you sort of like your goal or your intent, if you're doing that, is your intent is to create the conditions for the emergence of something greater than either one or other person can do on their own. So this is synergy, this is emergence, this is what happens when human beings and human beings and groups get together, we have the emergence of self-organizational flow. And this is the stuff that people read. This is the juice that people love in life. So in ways, where we're talking about the tele-ass balance, it's the ways of just starting to, I don't know, just nurture the conditions for that good stuff that people all love, all over the world love. And then what that does, it gets us towards flow, and it avoids rigidity. We see rigidity all around the world, and we sort of see it as tyranny and abuse and all that stuff. And then you see bloody chaos, where people go to war and they do all that stuff. Or, in a lesser level of that, you see chaos in relationships, where people are fighting, with the ones they love the most. It's like nuts, but that's what happens. That's what happens. So when because we fall back in more primitive patterns in ourselves, and we do these things to each other. And so I suppose when you're saying what fuels your intent, it's almost like you sort of need to have an idea that you're actually trying to create the conditions for something bigger to come into play. And that is the emergence of self-organizational flow and within the component parts, within this group, whatever it is.
I think that in itself is such a big reframe, actually, on what you're trying to achieve in a relationship, what you're trying to achieve in a business, because it changes it from me to we. It really brings it open. Yeah. Because I know for myself, being in a relationship, you want the flow, and working in teams, you want that. Like, everyone wants to experience that, but that seems like something that almost just happens randomly, that's out of people's control. And what you're saying is that it's not. What you're saying is that there are subtle relationships here happening below the surface of this, in the inner worlds of people, that give rise to either flow or give rise to chaos. So in the example of someone who is fighting a lot with their partner, even with their best intentions, they go into those situations, and then what if something happens and they lose it, and then chaos starts to emerge. Mm-hmm. And what you're saying is that when you start to become conscious of that, and then actively try and work to bring about more flow and more love and more unity, that the intention of doing that will allow you to zoom out a little bit and then open up to the possibility of learning these skills. And it's less about just me, and it's more about we.
Yeah, and intention is definitely a part of it, but you brought another bit into the conversation there, Cian, which is skills. And we need skills. So and I have a very simple formula for this now. When I meet business people, I say, what you're doing here it's pretty complex, isn't it? And I say, yeah, you're right, it's complex. There's all these bits, like. And so we're sort of saying, right, so what do you need to do with all the bits? Was I like to do a little bit of educare, asking questions, say, well, I just need to get all the bits to sort of join up, like. And I said, well, why is that? And they will say, well, look, just to get things working well. And that's exactly it. That's the sort of the magic formula of complex systems. So it's like, know all the bits, get them to join up, and then things will work well. So we can complexify that formula ever so slightly here now by saying what we need to have is differentiation. We need to be able to see all the bits, and there's a skill to that. There's a skill to knowing all the bits that have to come together in your business. So there's finance, there's marketing, there's sales, there's production, there's logistics, there's all of these things. And so when a business starts out pretty small, it doesn't matter if it's a one-man job show or one-person show, and they're doing it all themselves, then thing gets pretty successful. And wow, I need a person for this and a person for that, and we have a department with 2 or 3 people, and these people bring their personalities and they bring their baggage, and my God, the kids have not sleeping at night, and we've all this. It gets complex and complex and complex. So as it gets more complex, and as your business grows, and any business grows, what happens is we need more and more differentiation. And this could be diversity and inclusion. Our language is battered around regarding this, but if we just keep the word differentiation for a little piece, if we can know all the bits, and if we can get all the bits to link up, and this is where intention comes into it. Because we need to bring, if we bring aggressiveness to that, we're just going to trigger lower energies of the emotional brain and the unconscious mind, as people would know about. But if we can bring kind intention to that, there's a chance that this stuff's all going to link up. But that takes skill. It takes skill to be kind to someone who's just totally messed up. It takes skill to know that you're working with different elements within the person. So there's the whole piece about differentiating all the bits that's in the business, but then you have to start differentiating the component parts that actually make up a person's mind, which is, and there's stuff in there like thinking, that's something to think about. And then there's what's below thought. Well, there could be emotion. How the heck do we handle them and ourselves and other people? And below that is feelings and body sensations that may even contain old memories that are implicit. They're not explicit, they're not known, and they're implicit. And these implicit memories, they have primings attached to them, and people are getting triggered by stuff all over the place. And gosh, you know what? That doesn't matter really, only that they're on your payroll and they're in your senior management team, or they're disrupting the harmony of other people getting into flow. So if you're managing or leading other people, then you got to know about this stuff, and you've got to be able to differentiate that, and you've got to be able to approach it with this kind intention. Because once we do that, we actually create the conditions where people can integrate. And then we have the emergence of integration, and self-organizational flow sort of comes out of that. So, and the emergence of integration and self-organizational flow is just a fancy way of saying, let's get things working well here. Now it's just the same stuff, but it's just more complex language. But it leaves us open to being able to differentiate it in a lot more detail, because we're going to need to know how to, tidy our own stuff up a little bit, so that, other people don't trigger us and we don't lose it in a meeting, or don't lose it with a customer, or whatever the heck it is, or even lose it with someone at home that brings baggage to us and puts us in a bloody bad mood for the day. So now we're looking at differentiation, right? So the simple formula is very simple here. Know all the bits, get them to join up, and then things will work well. So that's grand, everyone can get that. So, and that's what happens when you're working in a system. There's 3 or more parts with people involved. It's going to be complex. So it's complex systems. That's what you're trying to do. Now, the more sort of highfalutin, or the more high-powered definition of the same formula is, we need to have differentiation with kind intention, and that'll give rise to integration and the emergence of self-organizational flow. Because self-organizational flow means that me as an individual is working well, me and you are working well together. If we have a group together, there come to teamwork or team intelligence. We can have a learning and performance culture with those people. Or across a whole organization, we can get into flow as well. And the flow is built around the workflow of the business that we touched about at the very beginning, where you get people to tell you what good looks like from different departments. So it's really, really simple, but it's simple in the terms of complexity thinking, that when we're able to think about complex adaptive systems, it makes it simple. So what we're doing is we're bringing, complexity. We're looking at complexity and we're making it simple after complexity. So it's simple. But it's simpleness or straightforwardness post having subjected it to complexity.
Hello there. We'll get back to the conversation in just a sec. But first I want to share about something that's very close to my heart right now. And that is the whole area of purpose. I've struggled with purpose throughout my life, all the way from believing that everything was completely meaningless, to really focusing on career and external achievements and feeling that purpose was in proving that I was worthy, to now really understanding that purpose does exist and it's about becoming fully ourselves. I've been working with the Soul Alignment Method and Miles Trainer, who's been a guest on this podcast, for the last number of years. And through that work, I've really learned how to uncover my own purpose, the elements of my own unique purpose blueprint, and now to help others do the same. And as part of Soul Alignment Method, the vision is a world where everyone knows who they are, why they are here, and can live it in this lifetime. This allows us to really make decisions that are in our highest alignment around career, around relationships, around lifestyle, location, and around our physical health and all the other areas of our life. Really brings this life to a whole other dimension. And as part of that vision, I would like to offer to listeners of this podcast a completely free or donation-based initial session for 90 minutes where we go deep and draw out from within the unique elements of your soul's purpose, your purpose blueprint. If this is something that's interesting to you, you can visit my website at www.humankinder.com.au and contact me there, or you can send me an email or go to the link tree in the description, which has all the links on my WhatsApp. You can also follow and message me on humankinder on Instagram, which is human_kinder. And I would absolutely love to work with you on this if it feels in alignment. Thank you. And now back to the show. Yeah, and you've covered a lot of ground there, and I think would be useful is to go back and start build that up from almost like a little bit of a user's manual for people if they were going to start working with some of this stuff, how they would approach it. Because what I really hear in what you're saying is that this is the difference between people enjoying their lives or not. This is actually the difference between going through your life and showing up to work or being in a family relationship where there are positive emotions and there's love and there's kindness. And it starts with actually knowing what you're dealing with, because we all come into the world with this sort of black box on our head and we don't have a user manual for it. And although it's simple once you understand it, it's completely mystifying when you're on the outside looking in and wondering, why did that person behave that way? Why do I keep acting that way? And you've mentioned a number of different bits that if you can start to differentiate them or know them and then work with them consciously, that you can actually change the quality of a relationship, change the quality of your own experience, change the quality of an organization. And I'm wondering if you would sort of start at the start there and saying, I'm coming into this and I don't actually know anything about what's going on in my head. I don't know why I feel so bad. I don't know why I'm fighting with that person. Where does someone begin on this journey?
Well, I sort of have a bit of crack with people, and crack is not powder, it's fun, right, in Ireland, right? But
that wouldn't go down so well in Australia, that one.
Would it not? No, okay, we better stay away from that.
Or America,
okay.
But yes.
But crack is a bit, we're having the crack. Like,
no,
I
said
have a crack.
People know what crack is now.
And it's an Irish word for having a bit of fun and banter, right? But I used to have a bit of crack with people and say, look, let's try and map out what a mind is or what a healthy mind looks like. And they'd say, well, what the heck is mind? And I think if you Google mind, you'll get, I don't know, the big numbers there and what mind means and all the definitions of that. But I like what Dan Siegel talks about in mind, but he says it's embodied and relational, right? It's in relationships and it's in our bodies and it's just not in our brains. And it's Dan Siegel is a good man to read in this piece. And I found his book on Aware and the I think it's called The Neurobiology of We. Yeah, it's very interesting pieces here. But I just more or less say, look at, and I draw a page and I'd say to people, okay, well, look at, put on the top of the page a sort of a smiley head, like, smiley face, and normally put in green to signify that it's in good spirits, right? And I'd say, well, look at, how would you know if someone's mind was working well? And I'd say, well, look at, surely they have good outcomes, they're getting good results in life, and they have quality relationships. And I always tag on the bit about quality relationships because I've worked with lots of people who, done very well financially, but the relationships went to bits, and they lost everything, and then they're all upset about that and whatever else. But they didn't have the balance right. So let's just say there's good outcomes, there's good results, and there's quality relationships. That's great. So in order for that to happen, well, what comes before that, so to speak? I'm just trying to map out a really layman's understanding of mind here. And I said, well, okay, so And I said, well, sure, maybe they said and they done stuff, or they made good decisions, or they had good performance that led to those outcomes. Brilliant, and we have that comes before that. I said, great. So then we sort of go a little bit deeper, and we sort of say, well, there's something weird, like what do you think might have been happening inside their head, like for that to happen, like, you know? And they'd say, well, I said, I don't know. I said, what are you doing now? And I'm thinking about it. I said, look at thinking, let's get that down on the page. So, okay, great. So then we can say, right, okay, the quality of that thinking was good. Because if the quality of our thinking is good, then we can say, gosh, we're able to make good decisions. We said and did things that worked well, and we had good outcomes in life and happy relationships. It's just simple Newtonian cause and effect stuff. Great. So we have this ability, we have the person now questioning, thinking. And then in brackets, I normally put beside that, well, do you think the quality of your thinking is always constant? No, sure, if it was constant, I wouldn't be meeting you, like, you know. Well, I said, okay, it's great. So we all vary in the quality of our thinking. Then I asked this really weird question, I think. I said to them, what do you think fuels thought? What fuels it like? Yeah, you know, petrol in your car, diesel in your car, electricity in your car. What's the fuel for thought? And sure, they bat around and say what they'd say, all sorts of stuff. And I'm looking for something here. And eventually, one way or the other, we get them to sort of settle on the whole idea that maybe emotion has some play in the quality for thinking. And yeah, sure, that makes sense. You know, that makes sense. So emotion fuels thought. And then I spend a little time about emotions, and I say, yeah, we all have emotions. And then I sort of get stuck in a little bit here, and I say, you know, I don't like that word, having emotions. Because if the emotions are very strong and we have them, then maybe the emotions will have us, like. So let's not be the victim of emotions. And I'm trying to find out what emotions are in life anyway. And I'm looking up work by Peter Levine, and he did trauma work with people back in 1968, and I was born in 63, and I thought, God, I better look up his stuff, and he's still on the internet, so he must know something. And then in his book, releasing the Tiger, he talks about, he asked the question, what is an emotion anyway? And I can't get anyone to tell me what an actual emotion is. And now Dan Siegel goes close to it. He says, well, look, it's an electrochemical signal in the body. And I said, well, God, that makes bloody sense. That makes sense. Emotions are electrochemical signals that we experience in our body. So that means that we experience them. We don't have them, so to speak. And it's subtle, but it means that if we're going to develop our emotional literacy, and if we can name our emotion, say, okay, I'm experiencing a bit of anger right now, or, oh, I'm very nervous right now, I've got fear, it's just as I'm experiencing that fear, or I'm very, very sad, depressed, disappointed here now. It gives us some space in our head between emotions, which can literally run our minds and wreck us if we don't have any literacy over them. So I spend a bit of time getting people to realize that, gosh, yeah, there's emotions actually running and taking from the quality of my thinking. That's a great. And the uncomfortable emotions are, I think you know this, Cian.
Yeah, I definitely one that I feel a lot is fear. Fear definitely connected to uncertainty. That is a huge one for me.
Yeah.
I've noticed in my life.
Yeah, okay. And one, you know, one of the reasons probably why you have so much fear is when I was young, I experienced a lot of anger. And you shared the journey with me, part of that, right?
Yeah.
And so, because I just sort of grew up in a place where anger was the norm, you know, for getting things done quick, and that had to be done. So then we have fear and anger. So I sort of draw them a bit like this for people, that there's fear and anger.
And I've also noticed that underneath my fear is anger. That often there's fear in response to something, but then once that fear dissipates, there's anger underneath it. So I might be afraid of upsetting someone, or afraid of what someone will think. And then once that dissipates and once I get to the bottom of that, there's actually anger at why does that person actually get to control me in that way? Which I find interesting, that they can almost be layered on top of each other in some way.
Yeah. And then I said to people, besides these are the three uncomfortable emotions we all experience, and because I think there's about 26 different types of emotions, major groupings of emotions that human beings experience. I'm not saying have experience, I'm just watching my language here, but I want to keep in line with what I'm trying to suggest to people. There's really only three of them that we're really trying to get tuned into a bit better, that take away from the quality of our thinking and our performance and the quality of our life and relationships. And then, as you know, I said, what do you think the other one is? Right? And you and I have talked about this, so you know what it is. So do you want to say what it is from this perspective?
Yeah. The other major one, and this is something that comes up in my work all the time, is some variation of sadness, like a grief or a sadness, or a how it manifests, a feeling of being rejected, something in that space.
Yeah. So basically, I sort of talk like this a little bit: right, fear, anger, and grief. And these are the three uncomfortable emotions, and these, of course, are linked to the survival mode that the amygdala gets into or the security guard, if you want that everyday language, when we get in under really, really tough situations and our survival response. And everyone pretty much knows this is the three Fs, which are
the fight, flight, and freeze, or many different Fs.
Yeah.
Block is another one that gets put in there.
Yeah. And when I'm doing this with people who've had, and they could even faint, it's another one that people get into, right? And there's another one that people do, it starts with F, when they're living a short life strategy, and it's not good for marriages and long-term relationships. But we'll keep it clean for now, but I just keep it simple as well, in that we just want these three just to give people a taste of what happens. And then I say to people, well, look at, if we're in fight mode, what uncomfortable emotion is likely to be dominating? And people usually get this pretty quick. They say, well, yeah, obviously, fight has got to do with anger. Agree? And then if we're in flight mode, you'd put that too?
Yeah, fear.
Fear, brilliant. And freeze, then anyone out there listening can say, right, you can get that one yourself. That's got to do with grief or sadness. So I get people to sort of join up the dots a little bit. Yeah. So then there's this connection between what's happening in the security guard, and because when we're in fear mode, we're moving away from something. And then when we're in anger mode, we're moving towards something. It's like a car, you have forward and you have reverse. And then when we're in grief, we're sort of stuck in neutral. So we're sort of stagnant. So, and these are sort of motivational vectors or drives that's coming from somewhere. That's going back, I don't know, 6 million years, as long as we are knocking about in this form as humans, so to speak. So these are really fundamental things. So, and I have people that come and they say, oh my God, the doctor told me I have anxiety. And that's almost like I have anxiety. Like it's something that's, no, sure, everyone has fear. If you're not afraid of a loud bang, if you're not afraid of a drunk coming at you with a broken bottle in a bar, like something wrong with you, like, you know what I mean? So there's nothing wrong with these emotions. It's only when they get out of kilter and they totally dominate the quality of our thinking. And it's only when something like the security guard or the amygdala, or as we say, hijacks your higher cortex, like your left neocortex or your frontal cortex, and it has your logic switched off, or it has your ability to read situations or see context switched off because of the high strong emotions. And it's only when that gets into play that it really, really impacts the quality of our thinking. And, you know, people need to be able to think clearly. And
I think that's an important thing to just double click on, because what you're saying is that the things that we say or that we do come from the thoughts that we're having internally. And that thinking rather than just being sort of clean or coming from a place of belief, is actually influenced heavily by the emotional state that we're in. So depending on the emotional state you're in, then you have certain access to certain types of thoughts, certain levels of thoughts.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah. And so it's like if you have been really angry with someone and all you can think about is how you're going to fight with them, what you're going to say, what they're going to say back, and your whole inner narrative is dominated by this. So it's actually very easy to see when you step back, but people don't often make this connection between the quality of their thinking and even the level of access they have to their own intelligence is being dependent on the emotional state that they're in. So that's a huge thing for people to learn, even first off. Mm-hmm. So where do you take it with them then?
Well, one of the things you can do is you can get people, and it's somewhat effective, this. You can get people to actually name the emotions they're experiencing. So they can say, gosh, I'm experiencing a fair bit of frustration. No, let's be honest. I'm using an F word here. I'm angry, like I'm rightly angry here, or I'm actually fucking sorry. That person actually scares me, like I'm experiencing fear. So then they can think, well, this keeps the frontal cortex on, this ability to see the bigger picture and stand back and have perspective. But being able to name the emotions we're experiencing helps to put a bit of distance between us. It helps us almost like stand out of the pothole, if you know what the pothole is, and wherever potholes in a road, like get out of the pothole and get back on nice level ground that you can move a bit better. So that's useful, being emotionally aware to name that. And it's useful. It's very useful as well for if you want to do other exercise and helping other people calm down. If you can summarize them, say back what they said to you, and empathetically name their emotion for them when they're upset, and that's a big skill. That actually helps them calm down, because it switches off this emotional hijack, this lock that's going on in their brain. So it's just important to say that the skills at every level with this, and one of them is just being able to say, okay, I'm experiencing this emotion, and put some distance between yourself. And then if you can couple that along with a bit of a breathing technique, which human givens have taught a lot about and whatever. And a lot of people do a lot of different breathing, and there's breathing for lots of different things. But if we find ourselves getting too emotionally aroused, a thing we can do what both of us know here is 7-11 breathing. And this is breathing in for a count of 7 and out for a count of 11. So I think you know this. So why don't you share what 7-11 is and how it works?
I think the key thing here is that what you're talking about is taking conscious control of the nervous system, because the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system are two halves, almost two parts, two modes of the nervous system. And sympathetic is when you're breathing in and it's amping you up, it's putting energy into the system. And then parasympathetic is when you're breathing out, almost like the first thing you do when you sit down on a chair is just go, ah. And it's that out breath linked to the parasympathetic activation of the nervous system that you're really honing in on here, because you're trying to make your out breath at least 50% longer. So whether that's 7-11 or whether it's 5-8 or whatever count works for you, it's making that out breath longer. And as you make that out breath longer, it has the effect of just calming down the nervous system. And so why would calming down the nervous system do anything to your emotional state, though?
Well, because the psychological principle behind it is that, if you calm your body, your mind must follow. So if we go long, slow breath out, and even hear the sound of it, like, it's even good because it impacts the vagus nerve. It sends this message down to the vagus nerve and starts to trigger the parasympathetic relaxation response, like you just amply explained. But also, it actually also changes the oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in your blood as well. So it actually starts to switch off a panic attack. So that's a really useful thing to be able to do. But it also, by taking this long, slow out breath, it actually helps to regulate the body. and helps to get the vibrational energy in the body to relax a little bit. And because a lot of people, when they have strong emotional experiences, they actually think like, there's danger inside me here, go on, what's this like? The danger's no longer out there because some old memory has been triggered. See, and then they say, and then this thing inside them is frightening them. It's not what's out there anymore. It's a memory of what happened before. And I love what what's this chap's name? It's escaped me now. The chap on authenticity and attachment.
On Gabor Mate.
Gabor, yeah. I know what Gabor says about this. And I often get people to write it down because a lot of people come with trauma. And a trauma is just a wound memory from the past that people haven't got around to integrating yet, right? And Gabor's line in this is beautiful, I think. It's like he says, trauma is not what happens to us. It happens inside of us because of what happened to us. So we have this old memory of what happened to us that's implicit. It's got this priming attached to it that's easily triggered in the moment, especially with our bloody families. And because the risk module is not there to suppress it now, we can suppress it in business or the outside world because we have to, because it's, can't risk the job, but at home you can, whatever. And this reminds me of what Brian Tracy would have said years ago. He says, if you must be rude to strangers, but save your company manners for your family. But we don't do this because of this risk module, So what we have is we have these traumas that are stored, and the best place I think these traumas are actually stored, and this is why the mind is a whole embodied piece, as Dan Siegel suggests. What I'm finding is that these traumas are actually stored in our bodies. So this brings us on to the next question. It's like, wow, where did these emotions come from? We've sort of said in the layman's terms what emotions are, these neurochemical signals in our body, chemical electrical signals in our body. But then we come along and we just talk about this amazing discovery. We ask people, where do emotions come from? And obviously, most people haven't got a clue. And I don't have a clue either. But I've made up this story that seems to work really, really well. Because what I'm seeing an awful lot of people doing is they're talking about emotions and they're talking about feelings as if they're the exact same thing. And if they're the exact same thing, why do we have two different words for a start? That doesn't just make sense to me. That's not economical. That two different words for the same thing. So what I'm finding with people is that feelings are very different than emotions, right? And I'll say to people, what's a feeling? And they say, I don't know. And I say, well, just do you trust me? And they'll say, yeah. And I say, well, you put your hand there. And I go, what's happening? And they say, oh, you're touching me. Yeah, with the pen. Right. I can hear it. Great. I says, what's happening now? And they say, oh, you're touching me. Yeah, it was something sharp. What do you think it is? And they'll say, oh, it must be the point of the pen. I said, how do you know? Was your eyes shut? And they say, oh, I can feel it. And wow. They say, okay, so what's a feeling? Well, it's something you can feel. Oh, it's something you can feel, right. Okay, so I get them to sort of write down at that point. So I get people to take notes when I work with them. I say, okay, so it's a sensory body sensation then, is it? Right, yeah, it's a sensory body sensation. Yeah. And like, this is like, they don't know the relevance of this just yet, but it's massive. Again, I've had people come to me and, a lady come to me, and actually a lady and a man both came to me, and both of them, two different people, I would say. And they were actually having to have an operation done on their gallbladder because the gallbladder wasn't working for some reason. And so I'd ask them, what uncomfortable emotion are you experiencing? I'm sure in both of these people's cases, it was anxiety. I have an awful dose of anxiety. Oh God. And when's it bad? Oh, it's worse in the morning. And then, Then what's like, oh, sometimes in the evening I can't get to sleep at all, and then I wake up the next morning and I'm gone. So I have this anxiety. And so, okay, so you're experiencing a lot of fear. What are you experiencing a lot of fear about? And then they'd say, oh, it's this, that, and the other. And where's it coming from? I don't know where it's coming from. I say, okay. So I was asking this particular lady, I says, and I says, they might be asking, I said, this emotion. Oh, yeah. She says, it's anxiety. So where do you feel it? She went, oh, I have no idea. So I says, great. And when do you have it bad? In the morning. I says, where do you feel it? Oh, I'd have no idea. Every time I'd ask her where she's feeling it, she'd put her hand roughly where her gallbladder is. Right now, I'm not any medical doctor, and I'd say, you have no idea where it is in your body. And she, no. I said, I'm going to ask you one more time. She said, this time I want you to pay attention to your hand. What? Just pay attention. I just passed on around. I says, you're experiencing a lot of anxiety. Yeah. And I said, where do you feel? And she go, it's here. It's in my stomach. It's in my gallbladder. I said, oh, right. So then we have this idea, right? And this is nuts probably for most people listening, but try it out for yourself, right? Because we don't want people to, we're not trying to sell a belief system here. People have to be able to experience this to work or not work. And I won't even use the word true, because the truth is something of which we never speak, according to Rumi, so we'll go with that. So we just need to know this as being true for ourselves, or work, or be real, or whatever word you want to use. So you'd ask people, and they'd be all gripped by whatever emotion. You say, where do you feel that in your body? Now, you know the answer. People say, oh, it's in my head. It's everywhere. Okay, it might be, that's great. Anywhere else? And I'd write head on the thing, and they say, oh, yeah. It wouldn't be in your gut now, would it? And okay, gut in your stomach. Okay, that's great. Anywhere else? And I normally leave a sort of gap between the head and the stomach when I write it on the page, because eventually I know they're going to come back and eventually say, it's actually my heart as well. So you'd find that this goes on with people all the time. So you'd have emotion, not just, and then underneath this, I'd put way down here, I'd put feelings. Right, I put emotion, I put feelings. And I'd say to them, this uncomfortable sensation, you're tuning into it now, are you? Yeah, I'm feeling that now. What's it like? Oh, it's like a knot, it's like a twist, it's like, yeah, my guts, like, oh, my guts. I'm thinking mayonnaise or whatever those things are. Those things people take for their stuff.
Anti-SIDS, anti-acids.
Whatever. Yeah.
Gaviscons.
100%. They're dosing.
Any of that baking soda.
100% dosing themselves with this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd say, right. And I'd say to them, you might be asking you, like, what do you do with the feeling when you experience it? Oh, geez, like, I push it away. I get rid of it. I put on a mask. Yeah, someone said, I eat, or I drink a little bit, or I do something else to distract myself. I just ignore it, like, I plough on. If there's myriad of stuff that people do with these feeling sensations. Now, psychology people, I think what they call it is we suppress them. So these feelings or these body sensations have been suppressed for years, it seems. And if you listen to Gabor and these guys, they're really dialed into this psychosomatic illness stuff. And, I've had people with me and I didn't really know what was going on years ago. And sometimes you meet people and they're actually dying of something. And I don't want to get into this trying to blame people for their own illnesses stuff, but there just seems to be a relationship here that the relationship between these feeling sensations and how well we're doing, in life. So that's sort of it then. And we're sort of saying that the feeling bits have got to do with body sensations, and we're saying that there's old memories here. And sometimes I'd ask people this question and say, that feeling now, you get it with anxiety, yeah. I'd say, be any chance now, is this the first time you ever felt it? And they go, oh no, what? I've had it I've had it all my life. I've had it forever. Like, geez, God, it's as old as I am. So that means it's around for a while, right?
Mm.
Right? And and then this is all linked to intergenerational trauma and all this type of stuff that people experience.
Yeah, and so before we open up that can of worms, just to summarize where we're at, we're sort of peeling back all the different layers deeper and deeper into the inner world of somebody. And so if I'm in relationship with someone, I'm watching my partner, or I'm watching a friend, or I'm watching myself, and I'm hearing the things that they're saying and they're doing, I now start to think, well, behind what they're saying and they're doing is some thinking. So they're thinking, and there's a certain quality of thinking. And that must mean that there are certain emotions underneath that they're experiencing. And then underneath that, they must have all these body sensations and these feelings that they're not aware of that's fueling this. And these feelings are coming from implicit sort of chronic trauma conditioning that's hanging around in their nervous system. And so I'm starting to think now that when you're really working with somebody, that's almost the level you have to be watching. You have to be recognizing that you're working with this complex system of a person.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're doing here is we're differentiating all the different parts of our inner world so that we can actually work with them better. And so where would you take it then if you've got all the way down to the level of feelings that are coming up from old conditioning or old traumas? Where do you go from there?
Well, as the fellow says, it all depends on the client, all right? You might stop at 7-Eleven breathing, like we did 15 minutes ago, I guess, however long goes back, because that might be all that they can take on right now. Someone might say, gosh, no, I'm really want to tune in and dial into naming these emotions. Great. That's great. Or someone says, well, this has been around a long time. How do you bloody change it? How do you get to the source? And I said, well, there's no source, so to speak. That's probably an incorrect thing. But how do you, as you say, and it's something you said there that I found a bit triggering, actually. It's like you're saying, you're trying to peel it back and get deep down into this core of this thing. And it's no mystery at all. People say all the time, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Oh, I'm feeling whatever. But people associate that with some cocktail of feelings and emotions, some mishmash of stuff. And because they can't differentiate it, they can't work with the different bits. And I know you're not saying that, but I loved what you said there. We're trying to know all the bits, differentiate them so we can give them kind of attention so they can link, so that they integrate. So we'll come back to that heavy little formula at the beginning here now. So, and that's the clue to where we go with this. So it seems then that if we can get people, and I love this line from Gabor Mate, so anywhere I can, validate the people I learned this stuff from, I will. And Gabor says this is not about trying to feel better. This is about getting better at feeling. Right? So if we can actually get better at feeling what's going on inside us, that's differentiation. So let's get better at feeling what it is and be able to differentiate that. Now, the ones in the gut are particularly tricky because for a lot of people, me included, I spent years having gut sensations. And I thought the best way to change those was, food was my go thing. We have a thing called Tater Crisps in Ireland, and I would have consumed, depending on the mood, anywhere between 2 and 5 packets of those in an evening. Especially, and it's interesting with food. Sometimes we eat food. There's a chap here one day, and he was laughing at this, that he was, driving along and go in to get petrol or diesel in the car, and he'd go in and be paying for stuff. Your man sold me at the counter. Why? He says, I'd have a bit of chocolate, but he upsold me and I'm coming out with 3 bars of chocolate. And I'd say, when would you do that? He said, I'd normally do it when I wasn't feeling very good. But he says to me, and he didn't even know he said, but you'd be amazed the amount of comfort you get from eating a few bars of chocolate. And I said, yeah, so do you feel your comfort eating? No, not at all. dead comforting the way he explained it. And I says, and is there any other time you eat? Ah, yeah. I sometimes eat, he says, when I feel I've done a really nice bit of business and I treat myself to a bit of chocolate. Okay. And he said, I was slagging my wife about this the other day. She takes a glass of wine when she's feeling down, and she takes a glass of wine when she's feeling up. And he said, God, I think I'm doing the same thing myself. So the interesting thing about these feelings, and especially the feelings in the gut, is that we feel this discomfort. And we've been conditioned to be soothed by food and all this stuff forever. Like, I had one lady, she was trying to lose weight for a wedding, and she came here and she was very cross with her mum, and she says, how come there's no pictures of me without having some food or cake or biscuits or sweets in my hand? All the pictures. She says, yeah, but we can never get you to sit quiet enough. It sounds like a bit of attention deficit here to me, for a photograph, unless we gave you stuff. We had to soothe you with sweets. Okay, and then she's wondering why, as this somehow related to her being 4 stone overweight for her wedding. So, yeah, so there's this relationship between these sensations in our body, and sometimes we have to learn to know them well so we can distinguish between a natural appetite or some intergenerational memory that's stored somewhere in our anatomy or in our gut, and that we're comfort eating, or we're taking stuff in from the outside to try and satiate or to self-medicate through food, so to speak, bad food. So that sort of just opens up that a little piece, right? So then the question you're asking then is, what do you do about that? Because I think that this is possibly one of the biggest unlocks that you can ever have in your life, because for me, this is one of the biggest lessons that I ever learned, because I grew up comfort eating all the time.
Easy now.
to
assuage anxiety all the time, and it was just a go-to. And I would binge really heavily on sweet things, and you just feel like that's just you. You feel like it's amazing how trapped you can feel in that behavior, and you can think that that's going to be you for the rest of your life. And so I think in terms of building hope for people who are feeling this or suffering this at the moment, I think it would be really interesting to talk about what can you actually do if you're not going to suppress, or you're not going to express, or you're not going to comfort eat, or you're not going to drink, or you're not going to... There has to be something that you can do about this to heal this, to help this move, so that you're not constantly trapped by this for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I'll just drink off my Harte again here. It's getting a bit warm. But it's really interesting that we say, that's just me. That's who I am. And I think what I've learned to understand is, no, that's not you at all. That's just something that happened to you because of what happened to you. It happened inside you because of what happened to you. So then we need to sort of be able to differentiate between our authentic appetites that we all have as a living thing and these body sensations that are, intergenerational trauma induced. So we have to get better at feeling, right? And we can actually, the answer to this is, I don't want to play it down, but it is quite simple. It is quite simple. And both you and I, Keane, we've done human givens therapy, and we've worked with Joe Griffin, one of the founding guys of it, very closely. And Joe was sort of very simple to say, if you want to get rid of a trauma, all you got to do is re-experience the trauma and keep your frontal cortex on, keep your observing self on. And there's a process there called the rewind technique that people use for people who have, PTSD and flashbacks, and it's been proven tremendously successful. Now, we're not saying that we're asking to take on anything as heavy as that here. It's almost like it's this stuff, and because those traumas, they come from they're acute traumas. You're dealing with acute traumas there. And that's because of what happened. So it's intrusive. Something intrusive happened that caused that trauma that's for PTSD. So what we're talking about here isn't really suited for that. So if you have anything at that level, please find someone who can do, I don't know, we would call it the rewinds. There's probably other names for it, Cian. What would you say? What they are?
I think there's lots of different ways, things you can do. I think it's EMDR, deconditioning techniques. There's many different things you can do in the kind of acute trauma world.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. So we're differentiating those type of things. These are the different ones. These are the naggy little ones that sort of fucking have you thinking this is who I am, like, and it's not who you are. This is what happened to you. So, and this seems to come. I did a bit of work with NICAM. It's National Institute for Caring and Behavioral Management, a group in the US. I did an online course with them, and they introduced me to the whole idea of chronic trauma, because I sort of knew a bit about acute trauma, but I didn't know that I actually had chronic trauma as well. And because it's nowhere near as intrusive as the other one. So chronic trauma really is the trauma of neglect. And a lot of people have this. I'd say nearly everyone has some form of intergenerational trauma. And it's nothing to do with you having good or bad parents. It really isn't. Now, parents that have difficulties obviously predispose their kids to more of this than others. But what acute trauma is and neglect is, it means that when we have this regulating relationship with our parent, something happened for that to rupture, right? And not be repaired. It could be really simple thing as the child's upset and the parents cooking dinner, someone rings the door, they have to go to the door, they come back in, the place is a bit of a mess. The parent has to tend to the stuff that's going to go on fire. The child is upset and the parent doesn't go back and just repair the regulation with the child. So it's very simple stuff, right? That can happen here, that can cause a rupture between a parent and a child, right? So that's a sort of level of stuff we're talking about. But people, and all of us, who actually have chronic trauma or neglect trauma, because it's just simply that the rupture doesn't get repaired and somehow gets stored as a memory in the system somewhere. And this is why we're very vulnerable to this when we're young, because the frontal cortex and especially the hippocampus, which looks after this when we get older, doesn't really develop until we're about 18 months of age. So all that stuff goes right in and it's programmed in us up to that point. So we somehow have to be able to get to some of this early memory stuff, but do it in a non-intrusive way and have it that we can get ahead of ourselves. And the way we can get ahead of ourselves is actually to get better at the feelings. Because people who incur chronic trauma, they have sort of three survival responses to this. Number one is, and you see this all the time and it's really sad, is the fight with the ones they love the most. So when you see families fighting among themselves, you can see that these people, didn't get the right level of attachment when they were young. So it's a whole pile of work done on attachment by Dan Siegel, sorry. And it's really, really interesting stuff. And Dan's bringing out new stuff on that. It's really very interesting. The qualities of attachment, and people know there's secure attachment, there's ambivalent attachment, there's neglect, or there's avoidance attachment, sorry, and then disorganized attachment. So people know about those things, and we all have some of that. We just all have some of that. But what happens here is this stuff is sort of stored in our bodies a little bit, and then we're sort of like victims of this, and we think it's who we are. So what I've been sort of doing with people for quite a while now is when people have this, I get them to realize that this sensation, whatever it is in their body, is not who they are, and it's an old memory that has feelings attached to it. So what do we do with that? Well, it seems that the hippocampus is the organ for integration in the brain, right? So, and the hippocampus has a job that it's doing for about 6 million years. So it knows the crack, like it knows how to sort this stuff out. And it's always trying to sort out, move stuff from implicit memories to explicit. So basically, something bad happens and we say, oh yeah, sure, that fella's I don't know, that fella was on drugs that day or something, or that fella was going through grief or something, and that makes sense. So when it's explicit, we've knowingly made it part of our story. So it's filed away, and then we don't actually have the same embodied reaction to it going forward. But when it's implicit, it means something different. It means that we have memories that are, there's implications to it. There's triggers. There's priming attached to it, and it gives all these body sensations. And we're very, very aware of these body sensations when we're triggered in the moment. But what we don't know is we don't know how much of this is coming from way back in the past, and how much of it's actually got to do with the person cutting you off in traffic today or taking your parking spot.
So a rule of thumb then is, if you can narrate it and talk about it and tell people about the events that happened and the circumstances that happened and how that all played out, that's an explicit.
Yes.
That's an explicit memory. But if
that's really good, because that's why talk therapy is so good, because what happens is that's called narrative integration. People are narrating that to themselves and they're putting it into their story of this is how my life has been. Right? And that stuff then is much easier to deal with, because cognitively at a thinking level, we're able to work our way through that. And, oh, I know this is my whole friend demon coming up, and yeah, I'll just not do there. But then there's other stuff that hasn't been integrated yet, that's still in the body, that's still in this implicit form. That's the stuff that trips us up.
Yeah. It is the stuff that trips us up. And so what seems to me is that the first step here, the very base of it all, is actually to start becoming aware of these things. And so once you start to become aware that, hey, I'm actually feeling uncomfortable sensations here, that's already a huge step. But what do you do if I'm someone who's trying to heal myself from that, if someone who's trying to be different, when I start to become aware of these uncomfortable sensations inside me that's giving rise to these emotions that I don't want to feel anymore. It's giving rise to thoughts that I don't want to have anymore, that it continues. And it's in many ways forcing me to say or do or be the sort of person that I don't want to be anymore. Once I start to become aware of this whole thing, how do I shift it?
How do I shift it? Yeah.
Is there an exercise you can?
It absolutely is an exercise. We could do that. Yeah. But you see, the thing about it is, being able to have the map of this mind piece is incredibly useful. That's a really good bit. Now, the next bit about how do I shift it, it's almost like you think it's a bad thing, right? And the fact that you'd say shift it means I've got to get rid of it. I've got to suppress it. I've got to control it. I've got to manage it. And these are the words people use all the times when it comes to these things. And we've got to realize what it is. Now, what is it? Really, what that thing is that you're talking about, it's part of your own sensitivity towards yourself that you were forced to abandon. In my case, I don't know, 35 years ago, add 15 to it. But can you see it? So it's a part of our sensitivity to ourselves that we were forced to abandon. That's all it is. And it's in here, and it's angry, and it's screaming, and it's afraid, and it's all of these things. So what we need to do with this, right, is here's a wonderful piece that you need to maybe remember about this, is that these type of implicit memories, there's something wonderful about them, is they don't age. They don't age. They don't lose their edge. They're just as fresh as they were the first day whatever we needed didn't happen to us. So, and I thought, and that's hateful, because they'll never leave you. They're always there, like they're a shadow. But it also means something else. It means it's brilliant. We can get at the sons of whatever. So we can get at them. So that means that if we can tune into these uncomfortable feelings and bring them up, we can actually put ourselves into these intergenerational trauma modes now, and we can access them. And that means we can actually go back in and we can regulate those memories now. Actually regulate them now.
What I love about what you said there is that you're talking about actually changing your relationship to these, and recognizing them for what they are, because the automatic assumption is these are bad. I want to get rid of them. These are not me. And it's actually that energy towards them that has them there in the first place. And so you're talking about a fundamental shift of starting to invite these in, to bring them back into the party. You mentioned that there are parts of your sensitivity that you've been cut off from and sort of been left out in the cold. Could you speak a little bit about that changing the relationship and what the difference is there?
Yeah, it's almost like, with a lot of kids in Ireland that were put in foster care, and kids were given up and all this type of stuff, or forced to be given up because, anyway, the history is the history. And it's almost like you can almost see this part of yourself as a little part of you, a little kid that was actually put into an orphanage and abandoned. Because that's literally what happened to that part of our sensitivity. We were forced to abandon our sensitivity to ourselves because we had this choice to make. We had this choice to make between our own authenticity, and this is Gapamati, authenticity versus attachment. We had a choice to make between our authenticity and our attachment to our parent. Now, we couldn't give up our attachment to our parent, so we had to give up our attachment to our own sensitivity. So we had to learn to suppress our own sensitivity to ourselves. We had no choice. No one had a choice. Now, we're not blaming the parent or anything, because we've talked about that. Everyone had their own stuff. It's a repair, or it's a rupture to repair that wasn't. There's a rupture that it wasn't repaired, basically.
So there was a circumstance with the parent relationship where you had an upset as a child and you needed something from them, some sort of comfort, some sort of love, some sort of acceptance. And rather than getting that, you got neglect in some form. Maybe it was they were busy, they had to go answer the door, they weren't in a place at the time where they were calm and were able to give love, they were anxious. And so very, very normal things. Everyone has this.
I just had this the other day with a chap, right? It's just so simple. He was an Irish chap, chatting away. I said, and he's all this stuff, and he's wrecked, but this, we lived in Dublin, and my mom and dad were from the country, and great, and they moved to live in the city. And I said, what'd your dad do? Oh, well, he just bought a house. He was so busy working, and worked 12-hour shifts, 5 days a week, and tough times back then, and all that good stuff. What'd your mum do? Oh, she brought up 3 of us, and we all came together. We're under 4.5 years of age, or 5 years of age, something crazy like this. And I said, what sort of support did your mum have? None. All our people were in southern part of the country or whatever. So this is a woman bringing up 3 kids on her own and no support. So how on earth did she have the energy to regulate all those kids? So that's the sort of stuff we're talking about. That's the crime that was committed here. So we just want to clear that up. So there we still have these sensations, body sensations in ourselves, and we have to be able to do something with them. And what I say to people is, what we're doing with these uncomfortable sensations now is exactly what happened to us when we were kids. So we're redoing this stuff. We're fighting them, as you said a few minutes ago, Cian. You're fighting with this stuff, and you're pushing it away, and you're suppressing it. And that's what's keeping it alive, or keeping it strong. So instead of doing that, what we can do is we can give it kind intention. So we can bring it up, see it as a part of ourselves, right? And people are terrified. They're literally terrified of this, because why they're terrified of it is that we have these drives or vectors when we're kids. One of them, the first drive we have is we need to be able to connect to a caregiver. The next drive we have is we need certainty. And then with that certainty, we need to be able to be certain about a future where it's going. And the other drive is the other drive for agency. We need to do stuff with what we know. And it's that relationship that's got out of kilter, which are drives in our nervous system, which are the very, very core of our personality. These three drives or vectors are slightly out of sync because of the rupture in the past. And you see, there is no certainty. This feels uncertain, which gives rise to the fear. So it's the lack of certainty that gives rise to fear. But if I get up this feeling, if I get up this sensation in my body, I'm going to feel like this really, really vulnerable child. Yes, you are. If you allow that to explode into what the looping that our friend the security guard is designed to have us do. But if we know enough about this and know that this is just a little part of us, our sensitivity to ourselves, that we're getting to know, and we're creating conditions through differentiation, and we're creating the conditions for that to integrate again, then it becomes a different ballgame. So we are sitting here in this chair, we're an adult, we're somewhere between, I don't know, whatever age, and whatever age, we're in the company of someone or just on our own. The door is secure, there's no one coming near us. It's a beautiful day, we can look around and see the little view out the windows, a lake, there's bushes, the sun is shining, it's a lovely dry day here in March in Ireland, and we're in this lovely peaceful place. So nothing's going to happen us, so there's no danger. Now the only danger that can come up is the fear that we have because of this uncomfortable sensation. So then and if anyone in this listening to this has ever done anything in mindfulness, they've half the job done. They really have half the job done. Because if you have any type of a mindful awareness history where you go into the breath, stay with the breath and be with the breath and just experience the breath, then that's great. Because what we can do here is we can just breathe. And so what I suggest to people is you just become mindfully aware of your breath coming in and out through your nose. Just in and out. And then you move it to become aware of what's happening in your chest, in and out, experience what's happening with your ribs, in and out. Just do your mindful awareness, in and out, in and out.
You maybe even guide me in this if you were going to do a little short example of the exercise that you would teach people on how to do this. I think that would be really useful for people. One of the goals I have for this podcast is to be able to give people little practical tools or little guided things that they can take away and learn. And then this has been such a huge revelation for people. First of all, to realize that so much of their life is actually being run by these uncomfortable sensations. And in my experience, that we will do almost anything to avoid them because we don't know. Like the things that people have done to avoid these is huge. And so to give people a tool that they can use so they know they don't have to avoid this anymore and they can safely go in and actually do it, I think would be huge. And so
yeah, okay, but we need to put a health warning on this. If you have an intrusive trauma memory where you have PTSD, flashbacks, night sweats and all that stuff, do not try this at home. This is not what this is for. Go and see a therapist that can help you with getting over PTSD. That's what it is. Now, so what we're looking at here instead is stuff that's linked to, all these people say, I had a great childhood. Yes, even the people that have a perfect childhood have this, because it's the myth of the perfect childhood that doesn't exist. So I want to just quickly say what it is and then we'll do it. So you get the person to breathe to the nose, breathe to the ribs, and get into diaphragmatic breathing. Fine. In and out, and that's just it. And then what you do is you invite the person, because sometimes people can't get to the feeling, and it takes a while to get to the feeling because we're so good at suppressing it. We're so good at suppressing it. They won't come up. The feelings don't want to show themselves. It's that little frightened orphan baby that doesn't want to show itself here. So what I ask people to do initially is invite them. I don't ask them. I invite them to, when they have this breathing going, what they need to be able to do is just tune into the emotion that they experience. So it's the anger, the anxiety, the sadness. Just tune into that and just tune into that for a little bit. And if it's getting anywhere strong, just go back to the breath. Go back and anchor in the breath, anchor in the breath. And then after a while, what we can do is we can say, okay, now I'm going to ask you to try and tune into the feeling, the body sensation. Describe it to yourself and just get that up. All you have to do is get it up and go back to the breath. Don't let it get strong. Just because once your hippocampus knows that it's there, it'll seek it out and start drawing new neural connections. Because it's been doing this job for 6 million years. It's well equipped to do the job. So the last thing you need to do is allow yourself to get strong feelings or strong emotions, because then you're going to mess the whole thing up. You do it really, really touch. You do it the lightest possible touch, and you do it with kind intention to what's happening inside you, rather than suppression. So is that okay to set it up?
It's a lovely setup.
Okay, so let's do it then. So I know you're an avid mindful awareness practitioner, Cian, so it'll be very easy. So that's something, and people can. What you do this initially is just, if you just sit back in your chair a little piece, and I'll talk you through it. Now, initially, I would suggest you just keep your eyes open for the first one, because for some people, I'm not going into this strange place inside myself. Just stay with your eyes open. So just with your eyes open, just become aware of your breath coming in through your nose and out through your nose. Just breathe in, breathe out. And when I do this, I think it's almost like when I breathe in, my nose squeezes in, and then when I breathe out, my nose sort of flares out a little bit. And this is sort of stuff you're just tuning in. It's that technical. You're just tuning into this stuff. Okay, and then just tuning into what's happening in your ribs. Just rising, just falling. Maybe Voss sees his eyes closed already. Okay. So you're tuning in. But if you're not comfortable with your eyes closed, just keep them open. And you're just tuning in to what's happening in the ribs. You're breathing in. You're breathing out. You're tuning into the sensation between your ribs and how maybe your ribs are moving underneath your skin. If you're just trying to get as sensory as possible, and you become aware as well as the chair underneath the backs of your legs, and maybe touching your back or your hand in your lap, you're just totally trying to ground yourself here in the present moment. And just know that you're in the present moment and you're grounded here. And then when you're aware that you're totally tuning into your breath, just start to become aware of your diaphragm. Now, you don't have to be able to go to this level, but it's just doing a little bit of diaphragmatic breathing, where you're breathing in and your stomach, as you breathe in, your stomach is almost filling up like a balloon. And as you're breathing out, it's almost like something is pulling your umbilical cord or your belly button right back to your spine. So you're tuning in to your breath. You become aware of the sensation of your breath in your nose, and in your ribs, and in your stomach. And what you're doing now is you're just riding the wave of the breath. You're just being with the breath. So then we just invite you now, as you do the breath, just tune into some uncomfortable emotion that you might be experiencing. Some level of anxiety or worry. A little bit of frustration, maybe anger or frustration. Could be a little bit of disappointment or sadness. It doesn't matter, it could be one of those, it could be a combination of those. And if it should be something very mild or it could be quite strong, and remember, stay with the breath. Breathing in and out, be aware of this sensation. Just be aware of the sensation going in and going out. And at the same time, part of your mind can do this. You might just give the emotions a little bit of another flow there. Let them have a little run out. But if you feel that the emotions are getting anywhere strong, go straight back to the breath. Straight back to the breath. That's brilliant. Now, if you don't want to take it any further than that, you can just leave it there. That's enough for now. You start to allow the emotions to come up, but they're not running your mind, because your mind is on your breath. Your mind is on your presence to what's happening in the room and all around you, and your body sensations sitting down the chair. So you can just cut it there if you want, but we'll just go a bit further now for those that want to just explore and get better at feeling the feelings. So I want to suggest to you now that maybe with those uncomfortable emotions, there's probably a body sensation somewhere. Something that you might know It's usually a good place to sort of find senses. It's in the gut or the chest. It could be the back of the shoulders. It could even be in your legs if you want to try and run away. So anywhere in your body. So you're picking up sort of an uncomfortable sensation in your body now, because you're creating the conditions for this to sort of come around. Like you're making it safe for yourself to come out and look at this thing. So you're tuning in now to any sensation you have in your body. At the same time now, before you do that, to any depth, just go back to the breath. Be aware of the breath now. Breath going from the nose. The ribs, so stay with the ribs. Stay with the diaphragm now. There's no rush. No rush. Keep yourself really centered. You know you're doing an exercise. You're sitting in your room. You're aware of what's happening in your body, sitting in the chair. And as you get totally tuned into the breath now, we're going to ask you there just to explore that body sensation, please. And describe it yourself. You're only getting as strong as 1, 1.5, 2. Keep it really safe for yourself. You can do this. Doesn't cost anything. Lots of time to do it. Just let it up very mindful now. You're letting up that sensation in your body, and you're describing it to yourself. At the same time now, I want to just invite you to stay with the breath. Stay with the breath, just staying with the nose, maybe the ribs, or wherever you feel it the best. Just stay with breath wherever you feel it best. And now I want to ask you just to allow that body sensation. Allow that body sensation to get to the stop now. And what you're going to importantly do with that sensation is you're going to, while it's come down, see it as a little part of yourself that you're forced to abandon. So you're given kind intention. It's almost like you've had this little baby that's been raised somewhere else, been abandoned for years, you're almost welcome at home. So you're allowing this part of yourself to come home, to be part of you, for it to integrate and to come whole. There's nothing you have to do, you're just welcoming it, you're giving it kind intention, and go straight back into the breath now. Stay out of your head, stay in the body, stay with the breath. If you're working with the nose, ribs, or the chest, wherever you feel the sensation of that. Be with the breath now. Be present at the moment. Just one last time now, as you keep the breath going, we're just going to ask you and invite you to just tune into the body sensation. And maybe the body sensation is moving, it's gone to different places, and if that's perfect. But there's nothing you need to do, only just be with the sensation. Just give it kind intention. There's a whole part of your body that is affected with this. There's a lovely, vibrant energy somewhere else in your body, a nurturing energy. You can just let that greet and meet this other part of you that may have been a bit frightened or abandoned or sad and frustrated over the years. So you're just tuning into those body sensations. Staying with the breath now, staying with it. Nothing you need to do with this. Nothing you need to do, just tune in, welcome it, give it kind intention. You're almost having a part, you're just letting it spontaneously happen. Stay with the breath. Nothing you need to do. But these are the breaths you can take anytime you like, now going forward. That just brings you back into this space and reminds you that you are yourself a complex adaptive system. Trying to know all these different bits inside yourself, you're trying to differentiate them. If you can differentiate them, get to know them, and give them kind intention, you're creating the conditions for emergence and self-organizational flow. You're just creating the conditions for health and wellness to emerge in your system. You don't need to force it, make it happen. Your body knows how to do this. It's been doing it for 6 million years. You can just let your head out of it. Take your head out of it. Just let this self-organizational flow just happen. And so whenever you're ready, then you can open your eyes and go back to the room. Okay. Thank you. feeling. So I just try to get in then, so I do. And I ask people, what did the feeling do? Not what did you do, what did the feeling do? So the feeling itself, the sensation, what did it do here?
The sensation was in my chest, like a tightness in my chest, as if someone had their hand almost around my heart and just slowly squeezing it. And the emotion is a little bit of fear and uncertainty, a little bit of afraid, almost like clinging to the future, tensed, afraid of what's going to happen. And then as I sat with it, the sensation, it actually moved down into the stomach, just here into the upper stomach. And as it started to move then, and the more I was able to breathe it out and bring kind intention to it, the message that I got was that everything is okay. It was like, no, everything is okay. You can let go of that. You don't need to cling. You don't need to cling to what's going to happen in the future. You don't need to be tensed up against it. There's nothing bad actually coming. There's nothing bad, because it felt like there's something bad coming. But the message I got was there's nothing actually bad coming. You can't be hurt by it. So let go and trust. Just let it happen. Just let it happen.
Yeah, because I always like to ask, was people think that I do something and I don't. It creates the conditions for them to be themselves. That's very straightforward stuff. And it happens in all complex systems in the world, and we can knowingly work with this in ourselves.
It's a lovely, there's a lovely energy to it, because you're going in there with the intention to accept whatever is happening. Completely changes your relationship to what's going on inside yourself. Change your relationship with yourself. When it comes to the practicalities of doing this, right? So let's say I'm taking this tool forward now into the rest of my life. When should I do it? How often should I do it? What does good look like?
Well, a daily basis is a good idea. I sometimes do it now when I'm driving in the car, because not just taking your eyes off the road around, but you're just sort of, you could be sitting in traffic, or you could be stopped, or think, God, this thing is coming up. Just feel it, like it's like, and you just sort of get this inner sense, like, oh, in the front of the brain lights up and whatever, and it's really interesting. I tell a very, very quick story. It's a bit rude for people. I had a chap, and he's a Dublin chap, and they talk a bit funny up there, the Dubs, like, and so this guy was like, he says, like, his big issue was like, I just can't work with anybody. If I don't like them, I just can't work with them. Like, that's great. So this guy was being promoted to a high level manager, but he's brilliant at what he does. But he had this thing, like, so I did this, but I mean, the whole complication around very early time, his mother and umbilical cord around his neck and all sorts of stuff. But anyway, we did this exercise a couple of times with him, and he just couldn't believe the changes. And I says to him, I'll just call him Mick, that's not his real name. I says, Mick, what's the solution? Like, what are you taking from this? Well, Bart, he says, I'll just wrap it up for you now. He says, it's very simple. He says, all you have to do is get your own shit up and love it. And I think people want to love themselves, but they don't know how to love themselves. And the bit they need to love is the bit about themselves they dislike the most. And this bit normally comes from these sensations. So if there's something somewhere in you that has you that you don't like yourself, so to speak, feel it and love it. It's simple.
I think that's a lovely way to wrap it up. Is there anything else that you would like to to finish on or like to share?
Yeah, it sounds too simple. But as I say to people all the time, nature only counts action. So if this sounds crazy to you, do some of it. Just do 7-11 breathing. Name an emotion. Just think about yourself as a complex adaptive system. Think about the people around you and your key relationships that you want to create a condition for something to emerge. It doesn't have to be what you want it to be. It's just let it flow. You know what I mean? Create the conditions to have emergence and flow happen. And just because one of the things we can do as human beings, like animals don't have this choice. They're in the complex adaptive system. They can't do anything about it. But we have self-conscious awareness. So we can be both in the system and work on the system by upgrading the quality of our thinking and our mind, and use our mind to tidy up this stuff. And we all have stuff to tidy up. And it's just, it's just self-work or self-growth or whatever you want to call it.
No, and thank you for sharing that. And it's a real gift for people, and it is a real tangible, practical thing that people can do in self-work. It's beyond just changing your thoughts. It's beyond challenging your thoughts. It's beyond journaling about what's happening. It really does seem to get to a deeper level that allows you to make actual progress over time. And in my life, in doing this for months, for a couple of years, it's incredible the progress that happens in that relationship, because the more you love yourself and love these parts of yourself, the more on a daily basis you start to feel better, and the more stable that actually becomes, and the more spare capacity you have to care and love others. And ultimately, I think that is what it's all about. Is there anything you'd like to share about something you're working on, or anything where people can reach you or work with you in any way you'd like us to share?
I don't know. People seem to find me if they want me. Anyway, I'm not looking to put an ad up here. No, I'm not. No, I've loads of work coming at me. And but it's just, the only thing I'd say to people is just do it. It's straightforward stuff. Just do it. It's just made such a difference. And just try and use it with your family at home, because nothing else really matters at the end of the day.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.